The doors of the Galactic Council chamber stood 30 meters tall, carved from a single piece of crystalline stone that had witnessed 5,000 years of galactic politics. Captain Jiwon Park walked through them with her head held high, though her heart pounded against her ribs. Behind her, Ambassador Haeon Lee moved with careful dignity, his weathered face showing no emotion. They were the last hope for humanity, and both of them knew it. The chamber was massive, designed to make visitors feel small and insignificant. It worked. Thousands of alien representatives filled the curved seating that rose in tiers around the central floor. Some had scales, others had fur, and many had forms that human eyes struggled to understand. At the top sat the council itself. 7 beings who held the power to decide humanity's fate. Counselor Vexstar leaned forward from his high seat. He was a reptilian creature, his golden eyes cold and calculating. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the chamber with a sound like grinding metal. Humanity stands accused of aggressive expansion, dangerous innovation, and disruption of galactic peace. How do you answer these charges? Gi-won stepped forward. She had rehearsed this moment 100 times, but now the words felt heavy on her tongue. We answer that we have broken no laws. We have harmed no innocent species. We have only done what any intelligent race would do. We have grown, we have learned, and we have secured our future. A clicking sound filled the chamber. It was laughter from Counselor Melthara, an insectoid being whose compound eyes glittered with malice. Secured your future? In 50 years you have taken 15 star systems. You have built weapons that rival our own, though we have studied warfare for 10,000 years. You have made allies with primitive species without council approval. You call this innocent? Hien spoke now, his voice calm and measured. We call it survival. When we joined the galactic community, we were told there was room for all species. We were told the galaxy was vast and full of opportunity. Were we supposed to remain on Earth, trapped and stagnant, while others claimed the stars? Vexstar's clawed hand slammed against his podium. You were supposed to learn patience, to understand your place in the order of things. Instead, you rush forward like children playing with fire, heedless of the danger you pose to yourselves and others. Jiwon felt anger rising in her chest, but she forced it down. She had to stay calm. What danger? We have traded fairly with all species. We have shared our medical advances freely. We have asked only for the same respect and opportunity given to others. If we are dangerous, it is only because we refuse to be victims. The chamber erupted in noise. Some aliens chittered their agreement, while others roared their opposition. Gi-won noticed that the species arguing in humanity's favor were all small, weak races that the council barely acknowledged. The powerful species, the ones who had ruled for millennia, wanted humanity gone. Counselor Vexstar raised his hand, and silence fell immediately. The council has reviewed all evidence. We have consulted our wisest advisors. We have examined human history, human psychology, and human potential. He paused, and Jiwon felt her stomach drop. She knew what was coming. Humanity is too dangerous to remain within council space. Your growth is too rapid, your ambitions too unchecked, your innovations too disruptive. Therefore, we have reached our verdict. Its chamber went absolutely silent. Guan could hear her own heartbeat. Humanity is hereby banished from all council territories. You have 10 years to evacuate every human colony, station, and settlement within our borders. After 10 years, any human presence will be considered an act of war. Furthermore, humanity is forbidden from entering council space for 500 years. This exile may be reconsidered at that time if humanity has learned wisdom and restraint. The words hit like a physical blow. Gi-won staggered, catching herself on a nearby railing. Haeun's face went pale, his hands shaking. 500 years. Not just their generation, but their children's children's children would never see these stars again. You cannot do this, Jiwon said, her voice breaking. We have billions of people in those systems. 10 years is not enough time. It is enough, Vexter interrupted coldly. We have calculated the logistics. Your ships are fast, your organization efficient. 10 years is generous, given the threat you pose. Threat? Guan shouted, abandoning all pretense of diplomacy. "We came to you in peace. We asked to join your community as friends. And this is how you answer us?" Melthera clicked her mandibles together in amusement. "Child species always think they are special. You are not the first we have exiled, and you will not be the last. Perhaps in 500 years, you will have matured enough to join civilized society. Or perhaps you will have destroyed yourselves in your reckless pursuit of power. Either way, you will not be our problem." Heion placed a hand on Giwan's shoulder, holding her back from saying something that could make things worse. "The verdict is final, then?" "There is no appeal." "No appeal," Vexstar confirmed. The vote was unanimous. Every council member agreed that humanity must go. You have 10 years, beginning now. Use them wisely. The dismissal was clear. Guards appeared at the edges of the chamber, ready to escort the humans out. Juan wanted to scream, to rage against the injustice of it all, but she saw something in Hyen's eyes that made her pause. The old ambassador was smiling, just slightly, as they walked toward the doors. Hyun leaned close and whispered, "They have made a terrible mistake." Guan looked at him in confusion. "How can you say that? We've lost everything." "No," Hyun said quietly. "We've lost nothing that truly matters. They think they've caged a dangerous animal by throwing it into the wilderness. But they've forgotten something important about humanity. What's that? We thrive in the wilderness. We always have." As the massive doors closed behind them, Juan turned to take one last look at the council chamber. Vexstar was already moving on to other business, dismissing humanity as easily as swatting a fly. But Jiwan made herself a promise in that moment. She would live to see the day when humanity returned to this chamber. And when they did, it would not be as supplicants begging for acceptance. Outside the station, the human delegation gathered around their shuttle. News was already spreading across human space. There would be panic, anger, and fear. But there would also be determination. Humanity had faced extinction before and survived. They had overcome impossible odds throughout their history. G1 looked up at the stars beyond the station's dome. Out there, beyond Council space, lay an entire galaxy waiting to be explored. The Council thought they were punishing humanity by exiling them. But maybe, just maybe, they were setting humanity free. "They'll regret this," Giwan said softly. "We don't need them," Yan nodded. "No, we never did." Admiral Minho Kong stood on the bridge of the ECS Unity, watching through the viewport as thousands of ships assembled in formation. Each vessel carried tens of thousands of people, their entire lives packed into cargo holds and personal quarters. Children, elderly, families, workers, soldiers, all of humanity was on the move. And Minho carried the weight of every single life on his shoulders. "Admiral, the last transport from New Vancouver has joined the fleet," reported his first officer. "We're ready to begin the jump sequence." Minho nodded slowly. New Vancouver had been one of humanity's most beautiful colonies, a world of pristine forests and crystal-clear oceans. Now it sat empty behind them, abandoned to whatever fate the Council decided for it. The thought made his jaw clench with suppressed rage. "Begin the jump," he ordered. "Take us to Rally Point 7. The fleet vanished into faster-than-light travel, leaving Council space behind. This was the 43rd evacuation fleet Minho had led in the past 8 years. 43 colonies, hundreds of stations, billions of people, all of them running from a home they had built with their own hands. Dr. Sora Choi was waiting for him in the conference room when his shift ended. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy knot, but her eyes burned with fierce determination. Spread across the table in front of her were holographic images of barren, lifeless planets. "I think I've found it," she said without preamble. "The breakthrough we've been looking for." Minho felt a spark of hope. Sora had been working for 3 years on a new terraforming process, something that could turn dead worlds into habitable planets in a fraction of the usual time. Humanity needed it desperately. The worlds beyond Council space were harsh and unforgiving. "Show me," he said, pulling up a chair. Sora manipulated the hologram, zooming in on a planet that looked like a ball of red dust. "This is Kepler 7, one of the worlds we surveyed last month." completely dead. No atmosphere worth mentioning. Surface temperature that varies between freezing and boiling. Standard terraforming would take 70 years minimum. She pressed a button, and the image changed. With my new process, we can do it in 4. 4 years? Minho leaned forward. How? We don't try to change everything at once, Sora explained, her words coming faster as her excitement grew. Traditional terraforming tries to build an entire ecosystem from scratch. My method introduces specialized algae that can survive extreme conditions. They multiply exponentially, producing oxygen and breaking down the surface minerals. Once they've prepared the ground, we introduce more complex organisms in waves. EA. CH wave prepares the environment for the next. Minho studied the projections. And this works? We've tested it on 3 moons. All 3 now have breathable atmospheres and basic plant life. In another year, they'll be ready for colonization. Sora's smile was fierce. The council thinks we'll starve in the wilderness. But we're going to turn the wilderness into paradise. Governor Gunho Kim was less optimistic when Minho spoke with him later that day via long-range communication. The governor of Mars Colony had been tasked with coordinating the massive logistics of moving billions of people, and the stress was showing on his face. "We're running out of time, Minho," Junho said bluntly. "We have 2 years left before the deadline, and we still have 7 colonies that haven't been fully evacuated. The council is already sending patrol ships to make sure we're leaving on schedule. If we're not gone when the deadline hits, they'll attack." "Then we work faster," Minho replied. "How can I help?" Junho rubbed his tired eyes. "We need more ships. The Exodus-class vessels are wonderful, but we don't have enough of them. Construction is proceeding as fast as possible, but it's not fast enough," Minho finished. He thought for a moment. "What if we repurpose the mining barges? They're not comfortable, but they can carry cargo and people." "Already doing that. We've converted every civilian ship we can find." Gunho paused. "Minho, people are scared. They're leaving homes some families have lived in for 2 generations. They're going into unknown space, 2 worlds that might kill them. I need you to understand, if this goes wrong, if we can't establish ourselves out there, humanity might not survive." "We'll survive," Minho said, with more confidence than he felt. "We always do." The next 18 months were the hardest of Minho's life. He pushed his crews to their limits and beyond, running constant evacuation missions with barely any rest. Ships broke down from overuse and had to be repaired in flight. Families were split up when some members couldn't make it to evacuation ships in time and had to wait for the next fleet. Supplies ran low, and rationing became necessary. But humanity kept moving. Engineer Daeho Shin became a hero during this time. His Exodus-class ships were marvels of engineering, combining human innovation with carefully analyzed alien technology. They were faster than council ships, more efficient with fuel, and could carry twice as many people. When Minho asked him how he'd achieved it, Daeho had grinned and said, "The council builds ships to last 1,000 years. We build ships to get the job done." Every ship Daeho designed was an improvement on the last. He slept for hours a night and spent the rest of his time in the design labs, constantly tweaking and optimizing. By the time of the final evacuation, the ships were outperforming council vessels in every measurable way. The last evacuation was from Proxima Station, humanity's oldest settlement beyond Earth's solar system. Minho personally led this mission, knowing that it would be watched closely by both humans and aliens. The station had to be stripped of everything: useful equipment, supplies, even the decorative plants in the common areas. Nothing could be left behind. As the final transport lifted away, Minho stood at the viewport and watched Proxima Station grow smaller. The council had sent observers to ensure humanity left nothing behind. Minho knew they were watching, probably expecting humans to try some last-minute defiance. Instead, he had left them a message. It was carved into the main bulkhead in letters 3 meters tall: "We will return." 2 weeks later, the deadline passed. Humanity was gone from council space, every last person accounted for and relocated beyond the borders. The exodus was complete. Minho gathered his senior staff for one final, meeting before they dispersed to their new assignments. Sora was there, along with Daeho, Junho, and dozens of others who had worked themselves to exhaustion to make this possible. "We did it," Minho said simply. "Against all odds, against impossible odds, we moved our entire civilization halfway across the galaxy. We abandoned homes, left behind accomplishments, and ventured into the unknown. And we did not lose a single person to the Council's deadline." There was applause, but it was tired and subdued. Everyone knew that the hard work was just beginning. "The Council thought they were getting rid of a problem," Minho continued. "They thought exile would break us, that we'd scatter and fade away. They were wrong. We're not broken. We're free." He pulled up a star map showing their new territories. Dozens of systems glowed in the darkness, each one representing a new beginning. "We found more resources out here than we had in Council space. We've discovered technologies the Council never bothered to look for. We've made alliances with species the Council ignored. In trying to diminish us, they've given us room to grow." Juno stood up. "What do we call it? This new beginning of ours?" Minho looked at the map at all those points of light representing human determination and human hope. "We call it New Earth, and we build it into something the Council will never forget." 10 years after their banishment, humanity had not just survived. They had planted the seeds of something extraordinary, President. Yunahan stood before the assembled representatives of 140 star systems, her voice carrying to every corner of the Grand Hall on New Earth. She was young for a president, only 42. But she had earned her position through brilliance and an unshakable vision for humanity's future. 90 years ago, the Galactic Council cast us out like unwanted children, she said, her words measured and clear. They believed we would wither in exile. They believed we would beg to return. They were wrong on both counts. The hall erupted in applause. Yuna waited for it to fade before continuing. "Today, we are stronger than we have ever been. We control more territory, command more resources, and possess more advanced technology than humanity has ever known. But we must ask ourselves, what kind of empire will we build? Will we become like the Council, jealously guarding our power and crushing those who might challenge us? Or will we be something better?" In the military district of the capital, General Tai Yang Bei was asking himself similar questions. He stood in the observation deck of the orbital shipyard, watching as construction drones assembled the latest Imperial Defense Fleet cruiser. The ship was beautiful in its deadly efficiency, bristling with weapons that could punch through any known shield system. "General, the new recruits have arrived for inspection," his aide informed him. Tai Yang nodded and made his way to the training grounds. The recruits were young, most of them born after the Exodus. They had grown up hearing stories of humanity's banishment, raised on tales of human perseverance and strength. Now they wanted to serve, to ensure that humanity would never be pushed around again. He watched them run through combat drills, their movements precise and coordinated. Human military doctrine had evolved far beyond anything taught in Council academies, where alien species relied on overwhelming force or ancient traditions. Humans emphasized speed, adaptability, and unconventional thinking. A human pilot could outmaneuver any alien equivalent. A human squad could outthink any opposing force. "They're good," observed Commander Yunjiwan, his second in command. "Better than the last batch. They'll need to be," Tai Yang replied. "The Council won't stay ignorant of our growth forever. When they finally realize what we've become, there will be a reckoning." Meanwhile, in a research facility buried deep beneath New Earth's surface, scientist Narration was achieving the impossible. She stood before a massive circular device, crackling with energy that made the air taste like copper. Her team had been working on this project for 7 years, burning through resources and countless failed attempts. But today was different. "Initiate the jump sequence," she ordered. The device hummed, building power until the sound became almost painful. Then, in a flash of light that made everyone shield their eyes, a small probe disappeared. Sensors immediately showed it had traveled 50 light-years in an instant. Without using any of the Council-controlled jump gates, Nari's team erupted in celebration. But she remained calm, checking and rechecking the data. It had worked. The quantum jump drive was real, and it changed everything. You understand what this means? She asked her assistant, a young researcher named Kiwan. We can travel anywhere in the galaxy without asking permission, without paying fees, without being monitored. The Council's entire system of control is based on their Jumpgate network. We just made it obsolete. The news reached President Yuna within hours. She immediately grasped the implications and ordered Nari's research classified at the highest level. This technology would remain humanity's secret until the time was right to reveal it, but not all of humanity's advances were military. Diplomat Sun Wuzhang spent his days traveling to distant systems, making contact with alien species that the Council had overlooked or dismissed. These were small civilizations, often primitive by galactic standards, but each possessed unique knowledge and perspectives. On a world called Therax, Sunwu met with a species of crystalline beings who communicated through light pulses. The Council had visited once, decided the Theraxians had nothing of value, and never returned. Sunhua took a different approach. We're not here to take anything, he explained through a translation device. We're here to learn from you and to offer friendship. The Theraxians were skeptical at first, but Sunwu was patient. He spent 3 months living among them, learning their ways and sharing human culture in return. When he finally proposed a formal alliance, they agreed immediately. Humanity gained access to Theraxian expertise in crystalline computing, and the Theraxians gained protection from raiders who had been harassing their borders. This pattern repeated across dozens of worlds. Species that had been ignored or exploited by the Council found humanity to be different. Humans listened. Humans adapted. Humans offered genuine partnership rather than condescension. The Valrim were a species of aquatic beings with remarkable engineering skills. The Council had deemed them too primitive because they hadn't developed spaceflight. Humanity offered them the technology, and in return, the Valrim designed ship hulls that could withstand pressures that would crush normal vessels. The Koresh were plant-based beings who could synthesize complex chemicals in their bodies. The Council had classified them as non-sentient. Humanity recognized their intelligence and learned from them. Techniques for producing medicine and fuel that were far more efficient than human methods. One by one, these species joined the growing network of human alliances. Some formally joined the United Terran Empire, while others remained independent but friendly. All of them provided something valuable, whether it was resources, knowledge, or simply another voice standing with humanity, back on New Earth. President Yuna reviewed reports of the Empire's growth with a mixture of pride and concern. In 90 years, humanity had accomplished what most species took millennia to achieve. But rapid growth brought its own dangers. We need to be careful, she told her council of advisors. History is full of empires that grew too fast and collapsed under their own weight. We must ensure that our expansion is sustainable. With respect, Madam President, said Economic Minister Tae-Young Park, our economy is more robust than Earth's ever was. Our resource network spans hundreds of worlds. Our technology continues to advance at an exponential rate. We are not overextending ourselves. Perhaps not economically, Yuna agreed. But what about culturally? We're absorbing dozens of alien species into our empire. Are we giving them genuine voice and representation? Or are we building resentment that will tear us apart later? It was a valid concern, and one that Yuna took seriously. She implemented reforms ensuring that every species within the empire had representation in government, access to education, and protection under law. Humanity would be strong? Yes. But they would also be just. In the shadowy corners of council space, rumors began to circulate about the exiled humans. Traders spoke of massive shipyards beyond the borders. Explorers reported entire sectors under human control. Intelligence operatives warned of advanced technology and powerful alliances. But the council dismissed these reports as exaggerations. After all, it had only been 90 years. What could one species accomplish in such a short time? Surely the humans were struggling to survive in the harsh frontier regions. Barely clinging to existence, they had no idea how wrong they were. General Taiyang Bei watched the latest batch of warships roll out of the orbital foundries, each one more advanced than anything in the Council's arsenal. The Imperial Defense Fleet now numbered in the thousands, with crews trained to a level of excellence that bordered on fanatical. They still think we're weak, he told his officers during a strategy session. They still think we're the same desperate refugees who fled their borders 90 years ago. That ignorance is our greatest advantage. Should we correct their misunderstanding? Asked one of the younger officers. Taiyang smiled coldly. No. Let them sleep. When they finally wake up, it will be too late. The United Terran Empire continued to grow, building strength upon strength, turning exile into opportunity, and transforming humiliation into determination. Somewhere in council space, ancient beings sat on their thrones. Secure in their power and certain of their superiority, they would not remain certain for long. Fleet. Admiral Giwan Park was 90 years old, and every one of those years showed in the lines on her face. But her eyes remained sharp as she stood on the bridge of the IDS Determination, watching the Council patrol fleet approach on the tactical display. She had waited her entire life for this moment. Admiral, they're hailing us, reported the communications officer. They're demanding we shut down the shipyard immediately and withdraw all human vessels from this sector. Giwan smiled, though there was no warmth in it. Tell them we decline. Communications officer hesitated. Admiral, they're threatening to open fire if we don't comply, and they can try, Giwan said calmly. She turned to her tactical officer. Commander Doyanro, please demonstrate to our guests why that would be a mistake. Doyan was young, brilliant, and utterly ruthless when it came to tactical planning. He had studied every recorded council engagement, analyzed their tactics, and found them predictable and outdated. Now he had the chance to prove his theories correct. All ships, execute pattern Delta 7, he ordered. Target their command vessels' shield generators. Fire on my mark. The Council patrol fleet consisted of 12 heavy cruisers, ships that had been the pride of their military for centuries. Each one was larger and more heavily armored than any human vessel. The Council commander probably thought he was about to swat aside some primitive human ships like insects. He learned otherwise. In the next 30 seconds, the human fleet moved with precision that the Council ships couldn't match. While the Council vessels were still turning to bring their main guns to bear, human ships had already positioned themselves at optimal firing angles. When Doyon gave the order to fire, concentrated plasma beams struck the Council command ship's shield generators with surgical precision. The shields flickered and failed. Before the Council crew could react, a second volley disabled their engines. The entire engagement took less than a minute, and the Council command ship was dead in space. Cease fire, Juan ordered. Transmit this message to all Council vessels. You have entered sovereign territory of the United Terran Empire. Your command ship is disabled but intact. You have two options: withdraw immediately or be destroyed. You have 60 seconds to decide. There was chaos on the Council frequency as the remaining ships argued among themselves. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to flee. In the end, survival instinct won. The Council fleet jumped away, leaving their disabled command ship behind. G1 had boarding teams secure the ship and take the crew as prisoners. They would be treated well and eventually return to Council space with a message. The message was simple. Humanity was no longer asking for permission. News of the engagement reached Emperor Minji's song within hours. She was 28 years old, the youngest emperor in human history. But she had inherited the throne during a crucial time and had proven herself worthy of it. She stood in the Imperial War Room, surrounded by holograms showing the border regions between Empire and Council space. They came into our territory making demands, she said to her assembled military commanders. They thought they still had authority over us. We've shown them otherwise. Now they know we exist, and they know we're strong. The question is, what will they do about it? General Tai Yongbei, now advanced in years, but still commanding the military with an iron will, spoke up. They'll convene the Council. They'll debate. They'll try to decide if we're a threat that requires action or just an annoyance they can ignore. Based on their historical patterns, I estimate we have 3 months before they make a decision. And if they decide we're a threat, asked Admiral Hejin Quan, who had assumed command of the First Fleet after Guan's semi-retirement. Then they'll send a war fleet, Tai Yang said bluntly. They'll try to crush us quickly before we become any stronger. They'll want to make an example of us. Minji studied the holographic display, her young face set in concentration. She had been raised hearing stories of humanity's exile, taught from childhood that the Council had wronged her people. Now she had to decide how to respond. "Let them come," she said finally. "We've been preparing for this since the day we were banished. If they want war, we'll give them war. But we won't wait for them to choose the time and place." She turned to Doyon, who had been promoted to commander of special operations. "I want you to hit them first. Show them that the old rules no longer apply." Doyen grinned. He had been planning this for years. "I have 12 targets selected Council military installations near our borders. All lightly defended because the Council believes they're untouchable. If we strike simultaneously, we can cripple their response capabilities before they even mobilize." "Do it!" Minji ordered. "But Commander Ri want minimal civilian casualties. We're not like the Council. We don't wage war on innocents." 3 days later, Doyen's strike teams hit all 12 targets simultaneously. Using the quantum jump drive technology that remained humanity's secret, they appeared without warning at shipyards, supply depots, and communication relays. The attacks were precise and devastating. Weapons platforms were destroyed. Ships, still under construction, were disabled. The Council lines were severed. The Council installations never had a chance to respond. By the time they realized they were under attack, it was over. Doyen's forces withdrew as quickly as they had arrived, leaving confusion and destruction in their wake. The Council convened an emergency session. Vexstar, now ancient and bitter, pounded his podium with fury. How is this possible? The humans were banished. They should be struggling to survive, not attacking our military installations. Intelligence reports flooded in, each one more alarming than the last. Humanity controlled over 100 systems. They had technology the Council had never seen. They had formed alliances with dozens of minor species. Their military was highly trained and equipped with advanced weapons, and somehow they had developed a way to travel without using Council jump gates. "We should have destroyed them when we had the chance," hissed Councillor Malthora. "Now they've grown beyond our control." "It's not too late," Vexstar declared. "Humanity may be strong, but they cannot match the combined might of the Council. We have thousands of member worlds, tens of thousands of ships, and the experience of millennia. We will assemble the greatest war fleet in galactic history and crush this human empire before it grows any stronger." The vote was unanimous. The Council declared war on humanity when the declaration reached New Earth. Emperor Minji called another meeting of her commanders. She looked around at the faces assembled before her warriors, scientists, diplomats, and strategists who had dedicated their lives to building humanity's strength. "The Council has made its choice," she said. "They want war. They want to destroy us for the crime of refusing to stay small and weak. Well, they're about to learn a hard lesson about what happens when you corner a predator." Admiral Guwan, listening via holographic link from her retirement home, spoke up. Her voice was weak with age, but her spirit remained strong. "I was there when they exiled us. I saw the arrogance in their eyes, the certainty that they were superior to us in every way. I've waited 90 years to prove them wrong. Give them hell, Minji. Show them what humanity is capable of." Minji nodded solemnly. "We didn't ask for this war. We would have been content to build our empire in peace. But if the Council insists on conflict, we'll give them a fight they'll never forget. Prepare all fleets for combat. Mobilize the reserves. Contact our allies and ask for their support. And someone get me a direct communication line to Vexstar." When the line was established, Mingi stared into the camera, knowing that her words would be heard across the entire Council. "You judged us dangerous when we asked for partnership. You cast us out and told us we were unworthy of your civilization. Now we've grown beyond your borders, built an empire on our own terms, and proven that we don't need your approval. You could have had us as allies. Instead, you'll face us as enemies. History will remember this as the moment the Galactic Council destroyed itself through pride and arrogance." She cut the transmission. In council chambers across the galaxy, there was stunned silence. No one had ever spoken to the Council that way. No one had ever dared. but humanity had never been like anyone else. And the Council was about to find out exactly what that meant. The war began with fire and fury. The Council assembled the largest fleet in galactic history, pulling ships from 1,000 worlds and combining them into a force they believed was unstoppable. 5,000 warships converged on the human border. Led by Council military commanders who had studied warfare for centuries, they expected humanity to retreat, to defend their territory desperately while being slowly overwhelmed by superior numbers. They were wrong. Fleet Admiral Juan Park had insisted on coming out of retirement for the first engagement. Despite her 90 years, she refused to watch from the sidelines. She stood on the bridge of the IDS Determination as the Council fleet approached. Feeling the weight of history on her shoulders, "They outnumber us 5-1, observed her first officer nervously. "Numbers aren't everything," Juan replied calmly. "They're used to fighting species that respect their traditions and follow their rules. We're not going to do that. Commander Doyun, execute your plan." Doyun had been waiting for this moment his entire career. Instead of meeting the Council fleet head-on in a traditional battle line, he scattered the human forces across multiple vectors. When the Council ships advanced in their standard formation, they found themselves attacked from angles they hadn't anticipated. Human ships used their superior speed to dart in and out of weapons range, striking critical systems and withdrawing before the Council could respond. The quantum jump drive allowed them to appear and disappear across the battlefield, making it impossible for Council commanders to predict their movements. The Battle of Sirius Gate lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Council had lost nearly 2,000 ships. The human fleet had lost less than 300. But victory came with a price. A Council dreadnought, its engines failing, turned toward G1's flagship on a collision course. There was no time to evade. G1 saw it coming and knew what had to happen. "Evacuate the ship," she ordered calmly. "All personnel to the escape pods." "Admiral, you need to come with us," her first officer pleaded. Giwan shook her head. "Someone has to guide the ship for the collision. I'm 90 years old. I've lived a full life. The rest of you have futures ahead of you. Now go. That's an order." As the crew abandoned ship, Quan locked herself in the bridge and turned the IDS Determination directly toward the Council dreadnought. At the last moment, she activated the ship's self-destruct sequence. The resulting explosion consumed both vessels in a ball of fire that lit up the entire battlefield. News of Giwan's sacrifice spread across human space like wildfire. The woman who had stood before the Council 90 years ago, who had witnessed humanity's exile and promised vengeance, had given her life to secure victory. Across the Empire, her name became a battle cry for Giwan. For humanity, Emperor Mingi felt the loss personally. Jiwan had been her mentor, teaching her about leadership and sacrifice. But there was no time to grieve. The war was just beginning. Grand Admiral Hejin Quan took command of all military operations. He was younger than Jiwan, but just as brilliant, and he had been planning this campaign for decades. His strategy was simple. "Don't let the Council fight the war they wanted. They expect us to defend our territory," he explained to his officers. "They think we'll dig in and wait for them to attack. Instead, we're going to strike at their core worlds. We're going to take the fight to them." Over the next year, human forces launched dozens of raids deep into Council territory. They didn't try to hold the worlds they attacked. Instead, they destroyed military infrastructure, freed oppressed populations, and withdrew before Council reinforcements could arrive. It was a strategy that kept the Council constantly off balance, never knowing where humanity would strike next. But Hejin's approach wasn't just about destruction. Wherever human forces went, they offered an alternative to Council rule. Chancellor Borum Park, daughter of the legendary Juwan, managed the occupied territories with a light touch. She implemented fair governance, respected local customs, and gave conquered peoples a genuine voice in their own affairs. The results were remarkable. Within months, populations that had been part of the Council for thousands of years were welcoming human administrators. They had spent centuries under Council rule, paying tribute and receiving little in return. Humanity offered them something the Council never had: respect. On the world of Venaros, a species called the Thal had served the Council for 5 millennia. When human forces captured their planet, the Thal expected the worst. Instead, Chancellor Borum arrived personally and spoke to their leaders. "We're not here to conquer you," she explained. "We're here to offer you a choice. Join the Terran Empire as equal partners, or remain independent with our guarantee of protection. Either way, you'll never pay tribute to the Council again." The Thal elders were stunned. No conqueror had ever spoken to them this way. After deliberating for 3 days, they chose to join the Empire. Their decision inspired dozens of other species to do the same. The turning point came 2 years into the war. Emperor Minji personally led a fleet to attack Omega Prime Station, the very heart of Council power where humanity had been exiled so long ago. It was a bold move, some said reckless, but Minji understood the symbolism of what she was doing. "This is where it began," she told her officers as they prepared for battle. "This is where the Council declared us unworthy. Today, we show them they were right to fear us, but wrong to think we were unworthy." The battle for Omega Prime was fierce. The Council had heavily fortified the station, knowing its strategic and symbolic importance. But human forces had the advantage of surprise, superior tech, ology, and the fury of 90 years of resentment driving them forward. Minji commanded the assault personally, coordinating dozens of ships in a complex dance of destruction. When the station's shields finally fell, she led the boarding teams herself, fighting through corridors she had only seen in historical records, in the Council chamber where her ancestors had been judged. She found Vexstar. The ancient reptilian was alone, most of his fellow counselors having fled when the battle turned against them. He looked at Ming-Yi with a mixture of hatred and grudging respect. "Should have stayed exiled," he said bitterly. "We gave you a chance to survive in obscurity. Instead, you've brought war to the entire galaxy." "No," Minji replied coldly. "You brought this war. You exiled us for refusing to be weak. You tried to control the galaxy through fear and arrogance. Well, your control is ending today." She took him prisoner and broadcast a message across all frequencies. From the very chamber where humanity had been banished, the Galactic Council is dissolved. Their rule is over. From this day forward, all species will have equal voice in galactic affairs through the new Galactic Assembly. No more will powerful species dominate the weak. No more will ancient arrogance trump merit and innovation. The war didn't end immediately. Some Council species fought on, refusing to accept defeat. But without central coordination and facing the overwhelming momentum of human victory, they eventually surrendered or sued for peace. The final treaty was signed 3 years after the Battle of Sirius Gate. The terms were surprisingly generous. Humanity didn't demand tribute or reparations. They didn't execute the Council leaders or enslave the populations they'd defeated. Instead, they offered membership in the new Galactic Assembly, where every species, regardless of size or age, had an equal vote. Some species accepted immediately. Others took longer, proud civilizations struggling to accept that they were no longer in charge. But eventually, most joined. The benefits were obvious: trade, protection, and genuine representation in galactic affairs. Emperor Minji stood on the balcony of the Imperial Palace on New Earth, looking up at the stars. 5 years had passed since the war began. Humanity had risen from exiled refugees to the dominant force in the galaxy. But Minji knew that the real challenge was just beginning. "Power is easy," she said to Chancellor Borum, who stood beside her. "What's hard is using power wisely." The Council failed because they forgot that strength without justice is just tyranny with a different name. Borum nodded. "My mother understood that. She gave her life not for conquest, but for humanity's right to exist on its own terms. We need to honor that by being better than those who came before us." A monument was built on New Earth's capital, a massive statue of Captain Jiwon Park standing proud and defiant. The inscription read, "Banished, we wandered. Challenged, we rose. Victorious, we remembered mercy." This is humanity. Across the galaxy, the effects of humanity's rise rippled outward. Species that had been oppressed for millennia found their voices heard for the first time. Innovation flourished as new ideas were valued over ancient traditions. The galaxy entered a golden age of cooperation and growth, but humanity never forgot the lessons of their exile. They maintained a strong military, remembering that peace was only possible when backed by strength. They kept their technology advancing, knowing that complacency led to obsolescence. And they always remembered where they came from. In council, now assembly chambers across the galaxy, the story of humanity's rise became legend. The species that had been cast out for being too ambitious, too innovative, too dangerous. The species that had turned exile into opportunity and humiliation into triumph. The species that had proven that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do to a determined people is try to keep them down. 100 years after their banishment, humanity stood as the protectors and leaders of a galaxy that had once rejected them, not through cruelty or oppression, but through the same qualities that had made them dangerous in the first place: determination, innovation, and an absolute refusal to accept limits. Emperor Mingi, now middle-aged but still fierce, gave a speech on the anniversary of humanity's exile. A century ago, the Council thought they were punishing us. They thought they were protecting the galaxy from a dangerous species. But they did us the greatest favor in human history. They forced us to rely on ourselves, to build our own future. To prove our worth not through begging for acceptance, but through sheer excellence. We are who we are today because someone once tried to keep us down. Let that be a lesson to the galaxy. You cannot stop a species that refuses to be stopped. The crowd erupted in applause, human and alien voices joining together. Because that was the ultimate irony of humanity's rise, in trying to protect the galaxy from human ambition. The Council had unleashed it. And once unleashed, humanity had shown not just strength, but wisdom. Not just power, but mercy. Not just the ability to conquer, but the wisdom to build something better. The age of the Council was over. The age of humanity had begun. And the galaxy, whether it knew it yet or not, was better for it.